Good evening, and thank you all for joining tonight's Think Girl Seminar. My name is Dominiece White. I am the project director for the Community College of Baltimore County's Center for Business Innovation and Trades. And tonight we have a really powerful seminar regarding mental health, and I think it's a subject that isn't talked about a lot in the entrepreneurial world. And in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to bring in Dominiece Clifton and talk about the Calm CEO, finding peace while in the hustle. Dominiece, take it over.
So again, my name is Dominiece Clifton. I'm the founder of Move and Still. And Move and Still is really, as an organization, we support businesses, schools, and other organizations with stress management and well-being tools and resources. We also offer mindfulness sessions. And so in my world, I am all about helping and empowering entrepreneurs and professionals to find peace as we work to build our dreams, build our businesses. And so that's really what we're going to be looking at tonight. Skip this because there was an introduction on the screen. So I always like to start my sessions with a mindful moment, and that's for a few reasons. That's one, because we are all moving extremely quickly these days with massive to-do lists, and oftentimes we do not slow down to have moments of mindfulness and to just give our minds and bodies a chance to relax and restore. And the second reason I do that is because it's 7 p.m. right now as we're on this session, and we all have had full days. Most of us have had a full work day. We might be caretakers for older relatives or, younger children, or children in general. And, we had a full day before coming here. And so mindfulness, having a mindful moment, gives us a moment to relax and really just gives our minds permission to calm down for a minute, to put the to-do list and all the things that we have to do on hold. And it gives us the opportunity to really allow ourselves to be present for this next hour while we're together. And so as we breathe, as we, trigger our parasympathetic nervous system, we are able to really focus again and be present. And so with that, I'm going to guide you all through a breathing practice and a bit of a body scan just to check in with yourself and see how you're feeling today. And so we always start with posture. And so placing your feet flat on the ground, sitting up nice and straight, but still allowing yourself to be comfortable. Placing your hands wherever they feel comfortable for you. And you can close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or if you want to just take a low gaze, you can just lower your eyes away from the screen. And then just begin to notice your body. So without altering your breathing pattern at all, just begin to notice how the air feels as it enters into your nostrils. And then notice how the air feels as it leaves your body on the exhale. Notice how your belly rises as you breathe in. And then how your body softens as you release. Take a moment to notice any sounds that you hear in your space. Maybe there's HVAC or other noises in the background in addition to my voice. Take a moment to draw your awareness to how the chair or the surface beneath you feels as it supports your body. Maybe if there's air, feel the air on your skin. Feel your clothes connecting with your body. Really just allowing yourself to notice your body and perhaps notice if there is any tightness or tension currently in your body. And the breathing practice that we're going to do today is called the 4-8 breath. And so what we'll do is breathe in for a count of 4, and then we'll exhale slowly for a count of 8, breathing out the mouth as if you're blowing from a small straw. We'll do that together 5 times. So when you're ready, take a big breath in for 2, 3, 4. Slowly release for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Breathe in for 2, 3, 4, and release 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 3 more, just like that, taking a big breath in. Now release. Beautiful. Breathe in for 2 more. And slowly release. As you release, just allowing your body to release any tightness or tension, release any stress. And we'll take one last breath together. When you're ready, take a big breath in. And last time, exhale slowly. Once again, just giving your mind permission to relax. And once you finish breathing on that last exhale, you can return to a natural breathing pattern. And once again, just pause and notice your body after taking a few breaths. Perhaps you notice that your heart rate has slowed down. Maybe your breathing has slowed down. A little bit of the stress that you entered in with maybe is released. And then beginning to bring the awareness back fully into the body by wiggling the fingers and wiggling the toes to wake the body up. And then slowly beginning to flutter the eyes open if they were closed, coming back fully into the space. All right. Let's see. And so the breathing practice again that we did was the 4-8 breath. And I like to always share the specific pattern that we did because you can always use this as a resource outside of our session today. The wonderful thing about breath work that I love as a self-care practice is that we always have access to our breath, right? So sometimes you might be feeling stressed, overwhelmed, maybe anxiety is kicking in and you don't have access to a yoga mat or you don't have access to just go for a run in that moment. But you always have access to your breath and you always have a moment to breathe. And so it's just really beautiful for us to have just a few tools in our toolbox, a few breathing practices that we can turn to. In any event that you're having a hard day and you can't remember any of the breathing practices, just focus on taking deep breaths, really filling the body with air and releasing slowly. And the slow exhale is what allows your body to calm down, because you trigger and activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our nervous system that's responsible for helping us to relax. All right, so we are going to be moving through our session today with 2 intentions or 2 objectives. The first intention is to increase our awareness of how chronic stress and hustle culture impacts our body, our mind, and our businesses. And we're going to learn how to interrupt this very vicious cycle that many of us face as entrepreneurs and working professionals. And we're also going to gain practical tools that we can use to help manage stress, complete our stress response cycles, and create more calm in not just our lives, but also in our businesses. What research shows is that 1 in 5 entrepreneurs actually seek help and support. So not enough people are seeking help and support. But when we do, right, that 1 in 5, what they find is that our productivity increases, our metrics in our businesses typically increase. And so we see that we have more success when we prioritize ourselves and when we seek support and when we focus on self-care. And so that's really what we're going to focus on today. All right, so I always believe in shared language. And so what that means is that I want to make sure we're all on the same page about the topic today. And obviously we're talking about stress, so we're going to start with that. I don't want to just assume, right, that we all have the same definition. And so when you hear the word stress or when you think about stress, what is stress? What comes to mind? What words, what phrases, like what do you think about when you think about stress? And you can drop it. Delise, sorry, is the chat available? It says only available during the meeting.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I can't, but if you all are able to drop your responses in the chat. So what is stress? On my end, I'm not seeing, I can't type in it.
So I can read out their responses. Overwhelmed.
Okay, I can't see it, so we're good. this couldn't, for some reason, I can't engage, but I don't need to. Okay, thank you, Dominique. What else do we think about when we think about stress? So it's a feeling, being overwhelmed, maybe like emotionally overwhelmed, you know, dealing with a lot of things. Is there anything else that comes to mind? Anxiety, yeah. So we're naming some of the emotions, right? Let's talk about it a bit more, and feel free to continue dropping responses in the chat. I'm still keeping an eye on that. So yes, overwhelm and anxiety are results of stress. Stress is a feeling of emotional, mental, or physical tension that exceeds our personal resources to manage it. And so if you think about it kind of like a scale, I like to say that stress are all the things, the stressors are the things that are happening to us. And then our coping skills are down here, right? And so we get to a place where we're not able to deal with all the stressors and the things that are happening in our lives. And what we want to do is really level and even the playing field by increasing our coping mechanisms, because the reality is that we all have very full plates and we're doing lots of things, and life is stressful. It's stressful sometimes in our homes. It's definitely stressful in our environments these days. And so what we want to do is not necessarily, the goal isn't necessarily to try to eliminate all the stress, right? Because sometimes the things in your life are just there. They're factors that you can't get rid of. But the goal is to really increase your coping skills so that you have the capacity to deal with stress as it comes your way. And so you all dropped in a chat, overwhelm and anxiety. So those are examples of the emotional and mental toll of stress. Essentially, again, stress occurs when the demands that are placed on us are greater than our ability to handle them. The most important thing to know about stress is that it's the body's reaction to harmful events or thoughts. So our bodies react to external and internal stressors. External stressors can be other people, it can be our jobs, it can be our businesses, it can be traffic, it can be finances, it can be getting in an argument or conflict with your partner. Like all of those things are external stressors. But then we also have internal stressors, right? So our thoughts stress us out. Worrying about the future and things that might happen before they happen are an example of internal stressors. Or maybe worrying about the past and, something that has already happened that we can't change. Those are all examples of internal stressors, right? So we can stress ourselves out with overthinking and worrying about things. And what happens is our bodies physically respond to that stress. So stress is essentially the physical response that your body has to a stressor. One thing to note about stress is that oftentimes when we talk about stress from a bad lens, right? We look at it as a negative thing, but not all stress is created equally. And what that means is that there's good stress and there's negative stress or bad stress. So good stress or eustress is stress that helps us to perform well, to be alert. It helps us to focus, right? Sometimes we need stress in our lives in order to get things done. An example of this is like, let's say you have a very important project that is coming up at work where you have to put together a whole presentation and present this presentation to your team. The days leading up to, maybe the hours leading up to that presentation, you are in go mode. You are working on the presentation, you're practicing the presentation, you're staying up late to make sure that you get everything done. Your body essentially kicks into overdrive to meet this goal. That overdrive, right, where you're able to stay up later and focus and, work really hard, work faster to meet the deadline. That's an example of eustress or good stress, right? It's what we need to get the thing done. On the flip side of that, we have distress or chronic stress, and that happens when we have prolonged stress. So good stress comes and then you're able to turn it off, you meet the goal and it goes away. Buying a house, looking for a car, getting married, like all of those major life events can fall under the example of eustress or positive stress. Distress is when you kind of live in a stressful state. So every single day, if you're going to a stressful job or if you're coming home to a stressful living situation and nothing changes about it or it doesn't go away, that becomes chronic over time when it's prolonged and it becomes harmful to our bodies and our minds. And so that would be an example of distress. And a lot of what we're focusing on today is really distress, because again, eustress is kind of like temporary arousal. Any questions so far? Feel free to drop them in the chat. All right. So when it comes to entrepreneurship, a lot of the reason and the ways that we navigate entrepreneurship are due to stories that we've been told about what it means to be an entrepreneur, or beliefs that we hold maybe subconsciously or consciously, right? We might not even know that we're holding some beliefs, and some of our values are tied to the way that we show up in the world. But these stories, these beliefs, they impact, right, entrepreneurship, they impact the way that we show up and serve as entrepreneurs. And so I want you to pause, and I want you to just take a moment to think about, what stories have you been told, or have you told yourself, about it, what it takes to be an entrepreneur, right? Like thinking over your entire life or even your professional career. What have you seen? What messages have you seen, maybe from social media or the media in general, about entrepreneurship? Or what are you telling yourself? So go ahead and just let me know what thoughts are coming up for you by dropping them in the chat. And there's no right or wrong answers here. Yeah. So Delise says, y'all put the same thing. So both of you said that it's Delise says a 25/8. So it ain't 24/7, right? We are beyond 24/7. We have found a way to manipulate time and create more hours and days, right? Because that's what we think, like we are never able to turn it off. Monique says it's not a 9 to 5, it's a 24/7 job. And Michael says, oh, thank you, Michael. I appreciate that. I'm happy to hear that you're taking a stress walk as you are learning about stress. That's very productive. So yes, so we oftentimes internalize that we have to be on all the time, right? That we never get to take breaks as entrepreneurs. So we're going to look at some of the beliefs, some of the myths, some of the stories that we inherit, sometimes intentionally or unintentionally, about entrepreneurship. So I want you to let me know, do any of these sound familiar? So kind of what was said in the chat about 24/7, right? We equate resting to a bad thing. Like when we rest, we feel guilty about it, right? If you're not doing something productive, if you are not working on your business, then you feel lazy, right? Because we've been told, again, that we have to be on constantly. And so a lot of times we feel guilty when we rest. Maybe we believe, or we've been told, that rest is for the weak. I hate that saying, I'll sleep when I die, because I'm like, that's really silly. And also, if you don't slow down, you will probably die, right? So it's kind of like something that people say is like a toughness, right? A mental toughness of like, I will take a break when I'm dead. But that's so problematic for so many reasons. So sometimes we inherit the belief or the stories that rest is for the weak. So if we take breaks, if we take time off, if we slow down, sometimes we feel like failures, right? We look around and it seems that everyone else is running the race, sprinting the race, and we feel weak because we're tired and we need to slow down. Or maybe you can relate to the fact that you feel like your worth is equal to your output. So you're only as valuable as the work that you're able to produce, the services, the products that you're able to produce, right? You only feel valuable when you're constantly achieving. Let me know if any of these resonate with you as you are looking at the myths, the beliefs that are on the screen, some of the messages that we're being told as entrepreneurs. All right, so we're going to look at a few more. Do any of these sound familiar? Wearing burnout as a badge of honor. So you might talk to other people, whether it's, your colleagues, if you work a full-time role, or, other entrepreneurs. And it's almost like a burnout Olympics, where everyone is bragging about how much they've been working and how long they've been going and how exhausted they are. So sometimes as a society, we can kind of wear burnout as a badge of honor to prove, right, that we're doing so well and we're doing all the things, right? So I'm running on sleep. I'm running on 4 hours of sleep, or, I haven't slept in days, things of this nature. This is equated to being extremely dedicated to your goals, to your mission. It's not seen as a red flag, but it should be a red flag, because we are burned out and we're running on fumes. Like there's nothing left in the tank, but yet we're still going. This one is a really big one, especially with social media. We look around and it seems that everyone else is doing so much, right? Like everyone else is doing great. Everyone else makes entrepreneurship look so easy. They make the grind look so easy. There's all these like get rich really quick. You don't have to work. This is how you can be a millionaire in 2 weeks kind of things. And that only paints really one side of the picture. A lot of time those things are exaggerated and they're not true. But even if they are true, what we don't see is the exhaustion that comes with that success, right? We don't see the exhaustion, the burnout, sometimes the torn up families as a result of that level of intensity and dedication. And so we inherit that. Again, we look around and we compare ourselves and feel like we're not doing enough because we're not doing as much as some of the people that we're seeing on social media. And then there's this last one where we think that overcommitting and saying yes to everything is normal, right? There's like this fear of missing out. We're afraid of missing out or falling behind. So again, let me know if you can resonate or if any of these resonate with you. Rest is for the weak. Yeah, running off fumes or adrenaline. Comparison is a thief of joy. Absolutely, right? And we oftentimes don't stop and think about like, what are the beliefs that are governing the way that I show up, right? What are the beliefs that are governing how I show up as an entrepreneur and the way that I serve? So this is a really great opportunity to think about, even if you don't, share it out loud, to think, have a moment of self-reflection and to think, am I holding any of these beliefs? And if any of these resonate with you, it's not a place of judgment. It's not anything for you to judge yourself about. It's the awareness is important, because when you are aware, that's when you can begin to make changes, right? The first step to change is awareness. We have to know what we're doing and how we're showing up so that we can make necessary changes. All right. So we talked about some of the external messages that we receive as entrepreneurs. We just went through a few of those, and obviously that's not an exhaustive list. That's only 6. There's a ton more. Now we're going to talk about some of the internal stressors that come with entrepreneurship, right? So we have all these external factors and all this noise coming from the outside. And then there's, thoughts, beliefs that we're holding internally that impact us as entrepreneurs and cause us to stress out. So imposter syndrome, right? So many of us at some point, maybe if not currently, have or will struggle with imposter syndrome. Questioning, am I good enough? Am I doing enough? Am I enough, right? Am I really cut out for this, right? Can I do this? All of those questions and self-doubts are us internally, right? Stressing ourselves out and again, worrying, right? Maybe you get a new project or a big contract and imposter syndrome kicks in because now you're like, oh my God, can I do this, right? So we don't talk a lot about the internal thoughts, beliefs, behaviors, self-doubt that we hold on to as entrepreneurs. Sometimes we are doing all of the things and we're hitting the milestones, but we're lonely. And maybe we don't admit that out loud, that yes, I am achieving my goals and checking off all the things on my to-do list, but I'm feeling lonely, right? When you look around, is there community around you? Are there other people around you that you can celebrate with? Have you told yourself that in order to get to the top, you have to go at it alone, right? Because sometimes those are the messages that we hear on social media. You can't depend on everyone else. It has to be all about you. Another internal stressor can be having decision fatigue. So we talked a bit about having overwhelming anxiety, like just kind of having so many things going on at once, whether personal or professional. And that becomes overwhelming to the point where it's just hard to focus and make decisions. And sometimes, right, when we're in that state, again, that can lead to self-doubt because you're just overwhelmed because there's a lot going on. But then you begin to doubt, can I really do this, right? Again, going back to imposter syndrome, do I have what it takes? And then the last one is this pressure to prove ourselves, right? This is especially true for people of color, for women, for folks that are queer, maybe for folks that are neurodiverse, right? If you fall into any of these categories, you typically have to work harder to, feel like there's a level playing field. And so we're constantly feeling like we have to prove ourselves. So there's a lot of thoughts and dialogue going on in our heads about working harder and working faster and, showing up and getting more done. Like there's this pressure to constantly prove ourselves internally, right, to the voice in our heads. And there might be pressure externally to prove ourselves, right, with people that we work with or people around us. So I will pause again just to say, like, does any of this resonate with you? Let me know in the chat. Drop a 1, drop a 2, drop a 3, or drop a 4 if any of these resonate with you. And Delise, let me see. Okay, so Michael says FOMO resonates, being fearful of missing out, right? So we say yes to all the things. It's like, I don't want to miss out. I don't want to leave money on the table. But sometimes we may or may not have the capacity at the time to say yes. A lot of times you'll complete one project, but you may not feel any happiness for it or fully appreciate it because you know you have another one to complete after it. That is such a good point, and that is something that I have struggled with for so long as an entrepreneur. I think going back to these internal thoughts and stressors, there's like ups and downs of being a high achiever and overly ambitious, right? And for many of us that are on this call, if we are, entrepreneurs, a lot of times that's typically going to be some level of high ambition. We don't talk enough about just the constant going that comes with the work. You do one thing and you don't even take time usually to celebrate, right? To celebrate or reward yourself for completing that goal. It's immediately right on to the next goal. And so it constantly becomes this moving goalpost of when I achieve this thing, I'll be happy enough, right? But we have to kind of look at, like, are the standards that we are trying to accomplish realistic? Is the timeline realistic? Can we enjoy the journey a little bit more along the way and not focus so much on whatever end goal it is that we have in our minds? So thank you, Delise, for sharing that. And I see that 3 resonated with you, Delise. Michael says it all resonates. Mind is always going 1,000 miles per hour. Yes. So that is definitely one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur. And that's where practices like breathwork and meditation and really building mindfulness become helpful. Because if you think about it, our minds, if you think about your mind like a muscle, right? It's constantly working. We're always overstimulated. We're constantly taking in information. Literally right now, you all are on a workshop, right? And I'm happy that you're here with me. But again, you're taking in information. We scroll social media and we're taking in information. We're working, we're trying to accomplish the goals and the mission of our organizations, and we're taking in information. And so our minds are constantly going. Most of the time, they only get to relax when we're asleep. But sometimes we can be so stressed that we struggle with sleeping, falling asleep or staying asleep. And so it's important to have practices in your toolbox, resources that you can learn, that you can lean on to help quiet those thoughts. And the more that you practice those meditation sessions or those breathwork sessions, the more that you'll notice that the thoughts begin to slow down, right? You're no longer moving at 1,000 miles per hour or thinking at 1,000 miles per hour. So many ways I could grow my business. And it's the question of, what do I do first? Like, where do I start? How to avoid the shiny ball syndrome? That's a really good question. I don't have an exact answer for that, but I think, again, I was talking to a few weeks ago, I was doing a similar session actually with another group of entrepreneurs. And there was a gentleman in the audience that has a construction company and it's doing very well, right? Which, as an entrepreneur, it's like, we want to celebrate that you just got this really huge, multi-million-dollar contract. That's great for a small business owner, right? But the flip side to that is that he was talking about how he's really trying to work on like eliminating blight and the abandoned row home problem in Baltimore City. And so he's working extremely hard and he's getting these contracts just to be able to like beautify our city and give people, more affordable housing. And it's like, that's a really wonderful mission, but you're doing it at the expense of your health, right? You're doing it at the expense of your relationships, right? He talked about how when he's stressed, he goes home and he has 2 boys, 2 children, two younger boys, and how, because he's usually so stressed from work, he's always kind of overactivated. And so he's irritable, he's impatient, right? And so what I talked to him about was, yes, it's important for you to be working towards this mission. And it's really beautiful that you have such a deep drive and desire to help this city and impact our city in this way. But it becomes a question of do I have to sprint the entire race, right? So if you think about entrepreneurship like a marathon, it's like you're going to be running this race probably for the rest of your life, even if it's not necessarily the business that you're doing now, you might start something else. And so it's like, can I still be working towards the mission, but can I do it in a way where it honors my capacity, right? Where it gives me time to move a little bit slower on my success and the goals that I'm trying to achieve, so I can prioritize my self-care and my health a little bit better, or so I can make sure that I'm taking care of myself so that I am not jeopardizing the people and the relationships around me. And so the question for him was like, how can you still work towards the mission but not sprint the entire way, right? Like, what does it look like to slow down and set more reasonable and realistic goals? And so to answer your question, Michael, yeah, there's always going to be some shiny object that we can go after, or, you know, maybe more that we can be doing. But for each of us, we have to really ask ourselves, right? Like, how can I do this in a way that's sustainable? Because that's really what it's about. If you're running a marathon, you know, sprinting a marathon, at some point your body's going to give out, right? Like literally and figuratively. And so you have to think about like, how can I run the marathon and stay in the race, but do it in a way that's a bit more sustainable? I hope that helps. All right, I'm going to take a sip of water. Any thoughts or questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. Yeah. Put your mask on first when you're on an airplane. And that's exactly what we have to do, right? Like, we have to, again, most of us are social entrepreneurs. And so we're working towards really great causes and we're wanting to have great impact and make a difference. But again, like Michael says, we have to put our mask on first and take care of ourselves so that we have the capacity to show up in the way that is required for the work that we're doing. All right. So what I want to remind you of is that you are the CEO of your business and you're the CEO of your nervous system. So the same way that you're running your business and calling the shots, and it's important for you to be in that role, you have to also be in that role for your body, right? You have to also be in that ownership role for your nervous systems. Because the truth is that as entrepreneurs, we wear a lot of hats. Right? We are we're providing the services, we're the accountants, we're the technician, we are customer service, right? Like, we're doing all of the things. But the truth is that without the right routines, without the right habits, managing all of the things that we are doing, they will lead to stress. It will lead to overwhelm. It leads to feeling stuck, and eventually we burn out, right? But here's the truth. Your energy, your well-being, and your mindset, they're the foundation of your business. So literally, your mindset, right? Creativity, the ideas, like all of those, your creative juices have to be flowing for you to see the success that you desire, for you to think about the out-of-box ideas that are necessary for your business to grow. So you have to have the energy, right? You have to have the right mindset, right? The mental capacity to do that. That's the foundation of your business. And if you don't, your business suffers. Your well-being suffers, your quality of life suffers, but your business also suffers. Another truth, if you're exhausted, your creativity suffers, right? If you are overwhelmed and you're trying to make decisions, it becomes really foggy. If you are overwhelmed or stressed out, trying to focus can be really challenging. Can any of you relate to feeling stressed and overwhelmed and like really struggling with getting a task done? Maybe like looking at the screen, but not really being able to take in the information. Has anyone ever had anything like that happen? Another truth, if you're constantly putting out fires, there's no space to think about growth, to think about vision, to think about expansion, right? There's no space for that if you are constantly putting out fires in your business, right? So we have to learn to, again, calm our nervous systems, have practices to calm our nervous systems and manage our stress so that we have the ability to be creative, to have the out-of-box ideas, to think about, you know, the vision and the mission and how we grow our businesses. Yeah, so Delise says, okay, so some of you are relating to not being able to focus when you're feeling overwhelmed. Exactly, right? We aren't productive. We are not at our optimum performance when we're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. So Delise says, distracted from other tasks that have to get done, sometimes can't get the task done at hand. Yes. So once you get to that point, once you're at the point where you're noticing that you're just like, not productive, right? Can't get anything done. That is your body like literally shutting down because you have ignored so many other signs and symptoms before that where your body was trying to ask you to rest, that now you're at the point where you literally like have to take a break, right? Because now it's impacting your productivity and your outflow. So we have to pay attention to the signs and the ways that our bodies communicate to us before we get to that point. That's the goal. So I talked about how if we're constantly putting out fires, we are not able to, focus. We're not able to look at the vision, the long-term goals. So the question then becomes, how do we put the fire out? Like, how do we move from a place of our nervous systems being aroused and on fire to putting the fire out? I want to pause just for a second to see if there are any questions or thoughts. I delay the hard task and knock out the more mindless tasks, but that causes more stress. Yeah, so it becomes this kind of hamster wheel of like trying to do the little things because you're overwhelmed and can't focus, but then it makes you stressed, like you said, Michael, because now there's deadlines and things that need to get done, and now you're stressed because you haven't gotten those things done. So it's kind of like this loop. All right, so a few years ago, I'll talk a little bit about how I started talking about stress and burnout and became fascinated with the topic. I used to be a nutrition and wellness coach when I started out in entrepreneurship, and this was about 5 years ago, right as COVID was happening in March of 2020. I was working with very high achieving and ambitious women. So these were mothers, wives, working professionals. They were working 9 to 5, and maybe they were running businesses or they had a side business or side hustle. And some of them were even in school. Like I had one woman who was doing all of those things, working full time. She was a wife, she was a mom, she had a full-time job, she had a side business, and she was getting a PhD, right? So these are very ambitious people. I was working with them and they would come to me because they either wanted to lose weight or they wanted to have more energy and just have a greater, more optimum well-being. And so they would come to me for weight management, weight loss, those sorts of things. And all of my clients were having a really, really hard time with weight loss. I would give them their workouts, their meal plans, all of the things that they would need to be successful. And they would be doing all of those things, but they would not be seeing the progress that they desired. And as a coach, that is really stressful, right? Because you want your clients to achieve the results that they come to you for. And so I started doing research about the body to really understand what is going on? Why are my clients literally just hanging on to weight and not able to lose the weight when they're doing all of these things that science tells us are supposed to help you lose weight? And so this is where I first learned about stress. And, when we're holding stress in our bodies, it becomes really hard for us to lose weight, because essentially what happens is when you're under a great deal of stress, your body stops prioritizing certain bodily functions to focus on survival. So women that are extremely stressed also have a hard time with reproduction and, getting pregnant or staying pregnant. And what happens is when your immune system is overwhelmed and constantly in a state of fight or flight or survival, it doesn't prioritize having a baby, right? Your body is not at a space where it's really optimum for carrying a baby. Another issue could be digestive issues, right? If you are dealing with a lot of stress, again, your body isn't prioritizing digestion in the same way because it's focused on survival. And the same is true for weight loss, right? Your body starts to think that it's in survival, and so it wants to hold on to all the weight. It doesn't want to let any of the weight go. So in understanding the body and stress, my job as a coach not only became giving my clients health and wellness tools to lose weight, but I also had to start empowering them with bringing their stress down. And as soon as we did that, we started to see results. It was like magic. It was like once they started to decrease those elevated stress levels, weight just started to fall off. And so one of the concepts that I learned about 5 years ago, which continues to be a game changer for my clients now as a coach, but has also been really impactful in my own life, is this concept of the stress response cycle, right? So this is probably going to be a new concept for many of you. And if you don't take anything else away from this workshop tonight, I hope that it has been valuable so far. I want you to remember this, right? I want you to remember this because this is going to be important with stress management in the long term. So what we don't know is that when it comes to stress, stress is supposed to have a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? So the beginning is homeostasis, or a place of balance. This is when you're feeling comfortable, right? Cool, calm, and collective. The middle is the alarm phase. This is when something happens and your body responds to that stressor, right? Your body, your stress response is activated in response to that stressor. But here's the game changer. Stress also has an end. It's supposed to have an end, and that's the recovery phase. That is the phase that allows your body to turn off the stress and begin to rebuild and reset itself. The problem is many of us don't know this, right? We don't know that stress has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So we are not intentional about helping our bodies to recover. And we end up getting stuck in stress response states, right? We end up getting stuck in the middle. So what's important to know is that you have to complete your cycle. So you have to go through the full cycle all the way to the end in order to reset your nervous system. Now, just eliminating the stressful situation, that's not enough. So if you're having a stressful workday and you just go home, that's not enough, right? What we have to do is actually do something, give our body a signal that the stress is over, so that your body turns on the part of the nervous system that begins to relax and restore. Hang on one second. I have to get my little person out. All right. Example of stressors. All right. So here's again what's important. Just stepping away or getting out of that stressful situation isn't enough. We actually have to communicate and do things to signal to our bodies that we're safe. So I want to give you an example of what this could look like, right? Let's say you are walking down the street and Michael's walking down the street right now. You're just enjoying your walk, right? Let's just all imagine walking down the street. And that's the beginning. You're feeling good. It's a nice day. You know, maybe you got a podcast going or some really good music and you're feeling balanced, right? You're feeling good. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a really big dog comes. You don't even know where they came from. And it starts chasing you. Now you're in the middle, right? Now you're in the alarm phase. What's going to happen is that your blood's going to start rushing to your muscles so that you can run. Your heart's going to start beating faster, right? To get you out of there. You're going to start breathing harder. Now you're in the middle. Your body is physically responding to the stressor, which is the dog that's chasing you. Now you're in the middle. So somehow you get away from the dog. You see an open gate to someone's house. You run in and you shut the gate and now you're safe, right? And then most of us are going to be like, oh, that was crazy. Oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. You're going to wait until the dog goes away and you're just going to walk out of that gate and just go home as quick as possible, right? That's usually what we would do. We would go home, we would tell someone that our day was so crazy and we were walking and we got chased by a dog and oh my God, I thought I was going to be attacked. Like you go home and you tell the story or you relive it, but you don't do anything to let your body know, hey, I'm no longer being chased by a dog, right? I'm no longer under threat. So that is how you end up with an incomplete cycle. So just physically being away from the dog is not enough to complete the cycle. You actually have to do things to your body to let your body know, hey, you can turn off the stress response. You can turn off the fight, flight, freeze response. Breathwork is an example of that, right? Taking a few breaths after you get away from the dog or, you know, doing something to clear your head, to calm the body down. When you do that, when you do those practices that complete your stress cycle, what happens is your body stops secreting those hormones. So it stops releasing the adrenaline, the cortisol, you know, everything that was used to get you out of that situation. It stops all of those things. If we don't do that, your body doesn't know. Your body doesn't know. So it still thinks that the threat is happening. And so even though you aren't physically being chased by the dog, your body is still secreting the hormones and your heart is beating faster and your blood is pumping harder because you have not actually done anything to let your body know that you're safe. I want to pause there and just see what thoughts or questions you have. because again, this is probably one of the most crucial parts of understanding stress, right? Like understanding how to turn it off when it starts. Is this a new concept for anyone? Is this your first time learning about this, right? And usually when this is someone's first time, it's like all of these big, like, oh my God, moments. So if you're having any of those right now, it's totally fine. Now, again, awareness is how we begin to make change. All right, so this is a new concept for most of you. All right, so the stress response cycle has to be completed, right? Again, just eliminating the stressor isn't enough to do that. So just going home from the stressful day, yes, you have gotten away from that stressful environment, but you haven't done anything to signal to your body that it is safe. And if you don't, your body stays stuck in a state of arousal. And honestly, most people don't realize that they are walking around with maybe months, years, sometimes even decades of unresolved stress cycles that have just built up in their bodies. And this is why you see people that all of a sudden were healthy, or like you won't expect this thing to happen, but something drastic happens to their bodies. Maybe, you know, this person has a heart attack at 50 years old and it seemingly comes out of nowhere. It's not that it came out of nowhere, it's that there's years of built up stress that your body has just been taking and enduring. And all of a sudden now it finally catches up to you, right? And not to sound drastic, but my maternal grandmother, this was her life, right? She was relatively healthy, and then at 50 years old, her body literally started to deteriorate from years of unresolved stress and trauma. And so even if you don't feel the impacts right away of being stuck in the middle of a stress response cycle or many years of being stuck, it eventually catches up to you. All right. So now with the last few minutes that we have, we're going to talk about what can we do, right? So we know that we have to do things to signal to our bodies that they're safe. Remember, stress is the physical response of your body being active with your body and start doing things to let your body know, hey, I'm okay, right? So I want to hear from you before I share practices. What are some of your current self-care practices? So when you are thinking, when you are feeling overwhelmed, or, you know, when you're noticing that, hey, maybe I need to take a break, what are some of the practices that you currently go to help you feel grounded? So go ahead and let me know in the chat. Yeah, breathing exercises is a great one. More steps per day, that's great, and more sleep. We're going to talk about more steps per day. That's wonderful. Breathwork, watching comedy. Oh, that's such a good one. Taking a nap. Okay, I love these. So we're going to talk in a second about physical movement, but I do want to address the comedy one because it's not one that I included today. But laughter is actually a proven stress reliever. Science shows that when we laugh and when we have joy and when our spirits are lifted and we feel good, we complete our stress response cycles. I always ask this question because it proves, right, this whole idea about laughter being good for the soul. Have you ever had a really stressful week, whether it be a work week or a school week, and you get to the end of the week, you finally make it to Thursday or Friday, and you go out with a group of friends or maybe a group of family? So you have, you know, a good group of friends that you enjoy hanging out with, you feel safe with these people, you trust these people, and maybe, you know, you guys go to happy hour at the end of the week. You're laughing, you're telling jokes, you're eating good food, you know, maybe there's some drinking involved, but you're having a good time, right? Like nothing crazy, you're having a good time. And then you notice that when you go home, you're like, oh my God, I feel so much better. Like I was having such a crappy week, and now you're feeling happy and you're lighter, and you're just reflecting on the great evening that you had, and you're feeling so much lighter. Have you ever had an experience like that? Drop a yes in the chat if you can relate to some sort of variation of that. It could be with family, friends, a partner, right? Delise says yes. Anybody else? Dominique says yes. Okay. So the reason for that is that when you are laughing, when you are indulging in those fun moments with people that you trust, your body is actually completing the stress response cycles. So you're releasing stress as you're laughing, and you're like the belly laughs, right? Like the really good ones. you are releasing stress. And so comedy, whether it's a comedy show or putting on, you know, a funny movie on Netflix or whatever it is, laugh as much as you can laugh, especially on the weeks where things feel stressful, because that actually helps you to get through the middle to the end of that stress response cycle. And so that's why you can step into that happy hour feeling super tight and tense and like, I had such a crazy week. And then at the end, you feel so much lighter. And that's because unintentionally, you have actually been doing something to signal to your body that it's safe. So while you're having a good time, your body is actually relaxing and restoring itself. And Delise says, sometimes you just need a good tear-jerking laugh to shake off the stress. Absolutely, right? That's the best way. That's the best way to do it, or one of the best ways. All right, so we talked about taking a nap, breath work, laughter, more steps, more sleep. I love all of these things. Let's look at a few more. All right, so Michael mentioned taking steps, and I love that because physical movement is actually the #1 way to release stress. I will say that again. Physical movement is the most efficient way to release stress. Any sort of movement helps your body to complete those cycles. So going for a walk, going for a jog, dancing. One of my favorite things to do when I'm feeling stressed is put on music in my living room. We have a pretty open floor. We don't have like a coffee table or anything. And me and my girls will just dance. Like we'll just have fun. Sometimes they try to teach me TikTok videos that I can't keep up with, but I'm laughing, we're dancing, I feel so much better, right? So any sort of physical movement. If you enjoy walking, right? It doesn't have to be hard and strenuous. Go for a walk. Go, you know, get outside in nature and take in the beautiful scenery as you walk. Jogging, you know, if that's more your speed, stretching or yoga, going for a swim. So any sort of movement that allows you to move your body is the most efficient way to release stress. So kudos to you, Michael, for being on a walk right now and also just infusing more walking into your day and your routine, because that's actually a really powerful way to release stress. And the beautiful thing about it is that it doesn't have to be a super long walk. 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes is enough, right? Another thing that we think when we think about self-care is that we have to devote so much time to it. And a lot of times we feel like if I don't have a lot of time, then it's not worth it. It's pointless. But that's actually not true. 10 minutes consistently. So if you do 10 or 15 minutes every day, that's better than just the 90-minute yoga class on the weekend, right? So the goal is consistency over duration, because again, we're experiencing stress every single day. And so ideally, we're doing things every single day to complete our cycles. I hope that makes sense. Another idea for us busy entrepreneurs is micro moments of pause. So little small micro moments can make a big difference, right? So I like to think about these as like a 90-second reset. So think about taking a few deep breaths if you're having a really stressful day, taking a minute to pause and maybe just take 2 or 3 breaths, right? We started with 5 breaths, right? That didn't take a long time. Just being intentional about like, if your shoulders are raised and you're feeling super tight and tense, just allowing your shoulders to drop and doing some shoulder rolls, right? Allowing yourself to release that tension. Maybe just placing your hands on your heart and just focusing on the present moment and allowing your mind to stop for a second, because the mind controls the body. So when we slow the mind down, the body also slows down, right? The nervous system also slows down. So these are small things that you can do throughout your day if you're noticing that you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed that don't take a lot of time. We've already kind of talked about this one a little bit, but I just want to reiterate this one: connection, right? So being in community, being with people that make you laugh, being with people that you trust, right? Showing affection. It can be to a partner, children, a cat. I always say a cat because I have a cat, a pet. If you have a pet, right, and you enjoy like, you know, rubbing your pet or just cuddling with your pet, that counts as connection and affection. And that is also a stress reliever. So just spending quality time with people that you love and care about is really helpful for releasing stress. And also sometimes being alone, right? Sometimes we just need to be by ourselves, and that counts as well. All right, and then the last way that I want to give you as a stress reliever is any sort of expression, right? So there's a saying, take what's on your heart and turn it into art, right? So take the things that are stressing you out or all the things that you're feeling and create something. This could be journaling, this could be writing, doing something creative, listening to music, making a playlist, making music, playing an instrument, maybe going to therapy as a form of expression. Like all of those things count as expression, and all of those things allow you to take and release what you're holding on to and create or put it out into the world. Any questions on anything that's been shared? I love this, find your tribe. Yeah, when it comes to connection, finding your tribe is really important. All right, so the last resource or tip that I want to leave you with is like, we are all busy, right? We're all entrepreneurs. We're all really busy. We're running companies. We're trying to build companies. We have these really big, grand ambitions. But we also, again, have to remember that we are the CEOs of our nervous system. So I just want to remind you, right, to work on completing your stress cycles daily. And that's because every day you are experiencing some sort of stress. Maybe today it's a small stressor. You just got stuck in traffic and you didn't expect that. Maybe tomorrow it's a big stressor. You got an unexpected invoice in the mail for your business and now you're freaking out about that. But every single day there's something going on. So every single day, ideally, we should be working on completing our stress response cycles. I've talked about this already. Another thing that I want you to remember is that consistency is more important than intensity. So 5 or 10 minutes every single day is much better than 90 minutes of something super hard or intense, right? More is better than, just a small burst at once. You also have to think about self-care and building it into your routines, right? Like building and making habits out of it. So the same way that you wake up every single day and you brush your teeth and you don't have to think about it, and like you're not going back and forth about like, should I brush my teeth and take a shower today? Like the same way that it's just a habit, you have to build routines with self-care that are that same way. I wake up 5 or 6 days out of the week and I meditate, and I usually do some sort of physical movement. I've been doing it for over 5 years now. So it's just as important and habitual as brushing my teeth. I literally don't even think about it. Like it just happens because I've done it for so long. So that's the way that we want to incorporate self-care into our lives. And then the last thing is just remember to schedule it into your day. If we look at our calendars, we have meetings, we have extracurricular activities, we have family commitments, friend commitments. If you have children, they have events and things. Like we have all of those things on our calendars. So you also have to prioritize caring for yourself in that same manner. So even if it's just a little 15-minute sliver on your calendar or a 30-minute sliver for you to remember to do something for yourself, seeing it is a visual reminder, and you're going to be more prone to doing it if it's on your calendar. All right, so here's what I want you to leave with as we close out today. I want you to think about, what would it look like to run your business without burning out, right? We've talked about the messages and the beliefs that we hold and internalize that dictate the way that we show up and run our businesses. But I just want you to spend some time reflecting after today's workshop on what would it look like or feel like for me to run my business, right, in a way that is sustainable, in a way that doesn't cause me to burn out. And then I also want you to think about, based on everything that we've talked about today and everything that you've learned, what is one tool that I can commit to on a daily basis to help me release my stress and to complete those cycles? Just one, right? It doesn't have to be lots of things. So I'm calling you out, Michael, again, because you're already doing it. Michael, went for a walk or is still on a walk right now. That's just one thing that maybe Michael can commit to on a daily basis. As my final reminder, you are the CEO of your nervous system. Yes, it's important for us to achieve our goals and to build these amazing businesses and to, have these missions that really have a great impact in the world. But you also have to run your own internal nervous system, right? And be the CEO of that. And no one else can do that but you. All right, y'all. That is it for our session today. If there are questions or thoughts, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm still going to be here for a few minutes, but I want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And I also want to let you know that I have a few resources on my website. So my website is not on here, but it's movexstill.com, which is the same as the ending of my email. And I've created 2 decks. So one is Pockets of Pause, and that's a wellness deck that is all about finding little moments of time to pause in the middle of your workday to prioritize yourself. And that one is co-ed, so men and women. The other deck is specifically for women. It's called Nourished, and those are self-care activities for mind, body, and spirit. And all of these activities for both of the card decks are between 3 and 30 minutes. So these are designed to be quick things that you can do in the midst of a very busy schedule. And so I just wanted to share those as resources as well.